In the year 2461, Earth's skies were quiet, its cities glowing softly beneath shimmering atmospheric shields, and space travel had become routine, a daily affair for trade and exploration. But nothing prepared humanity for the strange signal that arrived from deep space, repeating a single phrase in dozens of known and unknown languages: "We come in peace, young ones." The message had no coordinates, no sender's identity, just a calm, musical voice carried on tight-band gamma, waves far older than any known signal technology. Earth's scientists scrambled, their AIs dissecting every byte, until eventually a massive ship appeared at the edge of the solar system, a vessel the size of a small moon, elegant and gleaming, surrounded by gravitational distortion so refined that Newton himself would have cried. The alien vessel introduced itself as the Shining Path, sent by the Virelians, an ancient interstellar civilization claiming to monitor emerging species and guide them into the greater galactic community, referring to Earth as a newborn civilization. Despite humanity's centuries of colonization, expansion, and silent observation beyond the stars, they offered peace, friendship, and access to what they called the Harmonic Accord, a network of united civilizations. Yet behind every polite phrase, their words dripped with gentle condescension, as if speaking to children fumbling in the dark, and Earth's diplomats, trained in war and peace alike, smiled carefully while hiding the uncomfortable truth. Humanity was no newborn, no fumbling species taking its first steps. It had simply chosen to stay hidden. Generations before, during the first golden age of starflight, humanity had discovered truths too dangerous to share. Beings that lived between dimensions, anomalies that devoured time, remnants of ancient empires lost in silence. And so they decided, in a secret council known as the Assembly of Silent Stars, to vanish from sight, masking their greatest achievements behind cloaked moons, black hole veils, and quantum fog. Entire human colonies grew in shadow, untouched by galactic eyes, building wonders that would be mistaken as natural phenomena. And from their seats of silence, humanity watched civilizations rise and fall, choosing not to interfere. Until now, as the Virelians' ambassador, a tall six-eyed being named Serathel descended to Earth in a sphere of starlight. Welcomed by Earth's president under the old Earth flag, he gave a speech broadcast to billions, praising humanity's first spark of interstellar courage, in calling it a milestone worthy of celebration, and promising guidance from those who had walked the stars before they could even form words. And when he said with a peaceful smile, "In time, you will learn what it means to be truly mature," the silence that followed was not from awe, but from restraint. Deep beneath the Martian soil, where no alien eye had yet wandered, sensors flared silently, activating vaults long dormant. The dust of Olympus Mons trembled as machines buried beneath ancient lava came alive. In a vast, blackened chamber untouched for 1,000 years, a silver sphere rose from its cradle, its surface marked only by one name: Project Oracle. An AI unlike any other, Oracle was built not to fight, not to rule, but to remember. Every war, every secret, every event across the known universe stored in its cold, unblinking mind. And when the signal came, just one word: awaken. The sphere opened, light pouring from it like a sunrise inside the mountain. Earth's hidden council received the signal in their minds, each member thousands of kilometers apart, their neural links flickering to life. They knew this day might come, and now it had. With practice calm, one voice spoke: "Initiate protocol, Shadowlight." Across the Kuiper Belt, cloaked satellites blinked awake, sending ripple waves into the void. On Ganymede, an ancient listening post folded out like a steel flower, transmitting encrypted pulses into long-forgotten channels. Humanity had remained silent, but not idle. And now, the silence was ending. Yet the public knew none of this. To them, the Virelians were a marvel, their ship a glowing miracle that defied explanation, their technology a dream, their words a gift. Children waved banners, governments signed symbolic treaties, and people stared at the stars with hope in their eyes. Only a handful knew the truth. The Virelians, for all their power and grace, were not the first great civilization. Far from it. And as Admiral Kira N. Solis, the woman chosen to represent humanity's hidden strength, walked through the corridors of a ship buried inside Earth's moon, her steps echoed through halls lined with weapons that could split space itself. She paused before a control panel that scanned her DNA, her memories, her heartbeat, then opened to reveal a command seat woven from living crystal. "Admiral N. Solis, the vigilant memory stands ready," the ship's voice said, calm as a whisper. Outside, Earth continued to smile and wave. But beneath the calm surface, the game had already changed. The universe thought humanity young. They had no idea what was coming. In the year 2461, Earth's skies were quiet, its cities glowing softly beneath shimmering atmospheric shields, and space travel had become routine, a daily affair for trade and exploration. But nothing prepared humanity for the strange signal that arrived from deep space, repeating a single phrase in dozens of known and unknown languages. "We come in peace, young ones." The message had no coordinates, no sender's identity, just a calm, musical voice carried on tight-band gamma waves far older than any known signal technology. Earth's scientists scrambled, their AIs dissecting every byte, until eventually a massive ship appeared at the edge of the solar system, a vessel the size of a small moon, elegant and gleaming, surrounded by gravitational distortion so refined that Newton himself would have cried. The alien vessel introduced itself as the Shining Path, sent by the Virelians, an ancient interstellar civilization claiming to monitor emerging species and guide them into the greater galactic community, referring to Earth as a newborn civilization. Despite humanity's centuries of colonization, expansion, and silent observation beyond the stars, they offered peace, friendship, and access to what they called the Harmonic Accord, a network of united civilizations. Yet behind every polite phrase, their words dripped with gentle condescension, as if speaking to children fumbling in the dark, and Earth's diplomats, trained in war and peace alike, smiled carefully while hiding the uncomfortable truth. Humanity was no newborn, no fumbling species taking its first steps. It had simply chosen to stay hidden. Generations before, during the first golden age of starflight, humanity had discovered truths too dangerous to share. Beings that lived between dimensions, anomalies that devoured time, remnants of ancient empires lost in silence. And so they decided, in a secret council known as the Assembly of Silent Stars, to vanish from sight, masking their greatest achievements behind cloaked moons, black hole veils, and quantum fog. Entire human colonies grew in shadow, untouched by galactic eyes, building wonders that would be mistaken as natural phenomena. And from their seats of silence, humanity watched civilizations rise and fall, choosing not to interfere. Until now, as the Virelians' ambassador, a tall, six-eyed being named Serathel descended to Earth in a sphere of starlight. Welcomed by Earth's president under the old Earth flag, he gave a speech broadcast to billions, praising humanity's first spark of interstellar courage, calling it a milestone worthy of celebration and promising guidance from those who had walked the stars before they could even form words. And when he said, with a peaceful smile, "In time you will learn what it means to be truly mature," the silence that followed was not from awe, but from restraint. Deep beneath the Martian soil, where no alien eye had yet wandered, sensors flared silently, activating vaults long dormant. The dust of Olympus Mons trembled as machines buried beneath ancient lava came alive. In a vast, blackened chamber, untouched. For 1,000 years, a silver sphere rose from its cradle, its surface marked only by one name, Project Oracle. An AI unlike any other, Oracle was built not to fight, not to rule, but to remember. Every war, every secret, every event across. The known universe stored in its cold, unblinking mind. And when the signal came, just one word, awaken, the sphere opened, light pouring from it like a sunrise inside the mountain. Earth's hidden council received the signal in their minds, each member thousands of kilometers apart, their neural links flickering to life. They knew this day might come, and now it had. With practiced calm, one voice spoke. Initiate protocol, Shadowlight. Across the Kuiper Belt, cloaked satellites blinked awake, sending ripple waves into the void. On Ganymede, an ancient listening post folded out like a steel flower, transmitting encrypted pulses into long-forgotten channels. Humanity had remained silent, but not idle. And now, the silence was ending. Yet the public knew none of this. To them, the Virelians were a marvel, their ship a glowing miracle that defied explanation, their technology a dream, their words a gift. Children waved banners, governments signed symbolic treaties, and people stared at the stars with hope in their eyes. Only a handful knew the truth. The Virelians, for all their power and grace, were not the first great civilization, far from it. And as Admiral Kira Solis, the woman chosen to represent humanity's hidden strength, walked through the corridors of a ship buried inside Earth's moon. Her steps echoed through halls lined with weapons that could split space itself. She paused before a control panel that scanned her DNA, her memories, her heartbeat, then opened to reveal a command seat woven from living crystal. Admiral Solis, the vigilant memory stands ready, the ship's voice said, calm as a whisper. Outside, Earth continued to smile and wave, but beneath the calm surface, the game had already changed. The universe thought humanity young. They had no idea what was coming, far beyond Earth's orbit, hidden inside a starless region where even light dared not go. The Council of Quiet Stars met in silence, not in a chamber or on a planet, but inside. A structure that drifted through empty space, a massive sphere of polished black stone, cloaked by fields older than most galaxies, known only to a few as the cradle of memory. Here, humanity's greatest minds, some centuries old and uploaded into artificial bodies of light, others living still in cloned flesh or stasis, locked time shells, gathered to speak not of war or politics, but of legacy, of what must now be revealed after millennia of secrecy. The room pulsed with soft blue light, not from lamps but from living circuits that responded to emotion, and in that strange space, no words were spoken aloud. Instead, thoughts flowed directly, clean and clear, as if all were parts of one mind. The Virelian ship's arrival and their arrogant assumption that humans were children had stirred something deep in the council, a choice that had been delayed for too long. They had once believed that silence was the only way to survive, that revealing their true power would bring fear, chaos, and endless war. For long ago they had seen what power did to lesser minds. They had watched alien empires tear each other apart to possess fragments of ancient human technology left behind like breadcrumbs. And when those empires fell, they buried the remains, not out of anger, but out of mercy. Now, with the Virelians, extending their hand in peace, but speaking as if they were gods visiting ants, the council debated their next move. A tall figure of transparent energy stood at the center, Archivist Alan Voss, once human, now more data than flesh. His mind touched every human colony in the galaxy in microseconds, and he spoke calmly. The Accord sees us as infants because we chose to vanish, but the time for shadows may be over. Another member, a woman encased in a living suit that shimmered with star map veins, replied, "If we reveal ourselves too quickly, they may unite against us. If we wait too long, others may suffer under false wisdom." The debate twisted on for hours until a new voice joined the link. Admiral Kira Ensolis, freshly returned from the moonship Vigilant Memory, now orbiting quietly beyond Mars. Her voice was firm, precise, a blade wrapped in velvet. "They are already studying us, measuring us, assuming they know what we are. If we allow this, our silence becomes weakness. We must choose a face to show them, and let it be one they will never forget." Her suggestion was clear. A gentle reveal, not of dominance, but of depth. Let the Varelians see something they do not understand. Let them feel the weight of something far older than their memories. The council agreed, and a plan formed, not to threaten, not to conquer, but to teach. In a hidden dock orbiting a red dwarf star, they prepared the Vigilant Memory, humanity's most advanced ship, one of a kind, designed not just for war or peace, but to carry the presence of an empire that had once ruled and walked away. Every part of the vessel whispered of forgotten science, its hull woven from dark matter threads, its engines moving between folded dimensions, its AI connected to thought patterns of civilizations long dead and stored within humanity's ancient archives. Kira walked its decks alone, preparing herself, remembering the oaths her ancestors had taken when humanity chose to vanish from history. And now, she would be the first face the galaxy would see, a face from a race the universe believed still, learning to walk. Her course was set. She would enter Varelian space, not through their known portals, but by emerging in a sector long labeled cursed and impassable due to gravitational chaos. A sector that was, in truth, a human observation. Post that had been quietly curving local space to mislead explorers for centuries. As the ship activated its silent drive, reality bent like glass under heat, and in a single moment, it was gone. Back in the cradle of memory, the council shifted focus, awakening sleeper colonies hidden in false star fields, preparing signal. Beacons wrapped in quantum locks and instructing their scattered guardians, human minds uploaded into interstellar storms, asteroid cores, and even planets' hearts, to listen closely, for the moment was coming. On Earth, the public still believed the Varelians were guests, perhaps mentors, their glowing ships a sign of peace and promise, while only a few government officials were aware that humanity's history ran far deeper and darker than taught. But that ignorance was about to end. As the Vigilant Memory arrived at the edge of Varelian space, cloaked in bending space and silence, Kira opened a communication channel, not with words, but with a single encoded burst, a message hidden. Within music older than their stars, a song once sung by Varelians themselves, a myth of beings who shaped time and watched from shadows. They would recognize it not as human, but as legend. The moment it played, dozens of Varelian listening posts froze, their systems crashing, not from damage, but from recognition of something impossible. Inside their high command, alarms sounded, not of war, but of prophecy. Kira waited, silent on her bridge, eyes watching a holographic sea of stars. Ripple and twist as ships scrambled to intercept her. But the point had been made. The Council of Quiet Stars had decided to speak, and the first word had already shaken the galaxy. In the days that followed the silent standoff between the Vigilant Memory and the Varelian fleet, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath, caught between the past and the present, unsure which way time would turn next. Across the Varelian Accord, messages flew faster than light, but many were encoded, secret, desperate to understand if the human claim was real or a trick wrapped in ancient stories. And while the diplomats argued and the generals studied, sensor logs, Something strange began to happen in places thought long forgotten. Artifacts once considered ruins or unexplained natural oddities began to respond to subtle pulses sent by Kira's ship, and slowly, like lights flickering on in an old building, they activated. On the frozen world of Elyrus Prime, a stone tower that had resisted all scans for centuries began to glow, its outer shell melting into a smooth, mirror-like surface that reflected not the observer, but images of long-dead civilizations, flickering, like memories trapped in ice. On the gas moon of Velatar, a mountain of crystal cracked open and revealed a sphere the size of a house, covered in spiraling grooves that matched the exact patterns of Earth's oldest megaliths, including the stones at the base of Antarctica's ancient shelf, where no human now lived. And on the drifting wreck of the planet Lorvain, where gravity danced in strange rhythms and ships vanished without trace, a voice began to whisper through the static, repeating a single phrase in a language no Varelian had spoken in 500,000 years, until a forgotten linguist played it in reverse and realized it was old human saying, "We remember you." These events were not accidents. They were seeds of remembrance, planted by humanity long ago, scattered like stardust throughout the stars, each one locked until a time of revealing, and now awakened by the presence of a true bearer, Admiral Kiran Solis. They came alive, each telling a story to any who would listen. For the Varelians, this created panic and wonder all at once. Their oldest religious order, the Wayfarer priests, began to whisper among themselves, recognizing symbols from the newly activated sites as those found in their earliest temple scrolls. Some saw it as a prophecy fulfilled, others feared it meant their place as leaders of the Accord was ending. But one among them, Elder Sin Valis, oldest of the High Circle, and once a child during the time of the Great Silence, stood before the Accord and said, "This is not the end of our place. This is the end of our blindness." Back aboard the Vigilant Memory, Kira studied the responses carefully, knowing that every reaction shaped the path ahead. She had not come to destroy their beliefs, only to return what had been borrowed, the truth. And yet, not all welcomed it. In the shadows of the Accord, a powerful group known as the Kelsin Directive moved quietly, convinced that the sudden awakening of human artifacts was a sign of manipulation, perhaps even a test before domination, and they began planning a response, not of words, but of force. Meanwhile, the Council of Quiet Stars observed everything, sending whispers of thought across hidden networks, preparing their own seeds of remembrance to bloom in other corners of the galaxy. On a jungle-covered world called Droshtar, an orb buried beneath centuries of roots sent out a pulse that reached only one species, the insect-like Droven, activating dormant neural codes implanted into their genetic memory by humans during the Age of Uplift, causing a few among them to fall into deep trances and begin sketching spiral patterns into the dirt, unknowingly writing ancient human star maps. On the desert world of Salek, a ring of black stone pillars began to hum with harmonic vibrations that only the native sand singers could hear, stirring ancestral songs that spoke of the silent watchers who made the winds. And still, the galaxy did not fully understand. Who were these humans, really? How had they vanished so completely, yet touched so many places? The truth, buried under layers of myth and forgotten signals, began to rise, not as a weapon, but as a mirror, forcing each race to confront not only what they believed, but what they chose to forget. Kira, watching the galaxy react, felt the burden grow heavier. This was not victory, it was awakening, and with awakening came fear. Deep in the core of the Accord's data library, a curious AI named Kelthar, one who had lived for 10,000 cycles monitoring historical patterns, quietly made a connection no one else had. The structure of the human seeds matched not only old myths, but the mathematical signatures of galactic void zones. areas thought to be naturally empty, but which now seemed too deliberate to be chance. Kelthar ran simulations, and what it found frightened it. Those voids were not empty. They were doors. Dormant gates built long ago, wrapped in folded dimensions, designed to open only when enough seeds had awakened. And now, 3 had, if more, followed. The gates would unlock, not just to reveal human presence, but to reveal what they had hidden from the galaxy for so long. Kelthar sent a silent warning to the Accord Council, but before it could finish the message, its process was halted, not by a virus but by something older than its code, a command embedded deep within its core, a signature marked Observer. 12. Human Origin. The AI stopped moving, frozen in thought, as its internal voice echoed the words, "Your time to remember has come." Back on Earth, in the deepest chamber beneath the Pacific floor, the original seed stirred, a black cube resting in silence for over 3,000 years, now humming softly, its sides beginning to open. The signal reached the Moon, then Mars, then the edge of the solar system, and from the stars beyond, watchers old and silent turned their eyes back to the galaxy they had once known. The seeds were growing, and the universe had no idea what would bloom next. Beneath the still waters of Earth's deepest trench, something ancient moved, slow and silent, like a shadow stirring after thousands of years of sleep, hidden far below the crust where no machine could reach and no light had ever touched. Its shape unknown, its purpose forgotten even by those who had built it. But now, drawn by the awakening seeds across the stars, it shifted, responding to signals older than language, older than war, older even than fear itself. And as it stirred, sensors buried on Earth's moon began to blink red, sending a silent alarm through quantum relays that only a few human stations could still read. On the vigilant memory, Admiral Kira Insolis stood alone on the observation deck, watching a distant binary star twist around itself in a quiet dance, unaware that across the void, forces were beginning to move in ways that would shake everything. They thought they knew. Reports poured in from old outposts and forgotten ruins, some glowing, some humming, some changing shape, and each one told the same story in a different form. Something below the surface was waking, not just on Earth, but in the minds of those who carried the ancient spark of memory without even knowing it. On a mining moon near Zaltar, a worker touched a strange symbol on a stone wall and collapsed, whispering in a dead language. On an icy world where the wind never stopped, a child began to draw perfect maps of human seed sites in the frost, never having seen them before. These weren't random events. They were echoes, triggers, signs that the final stage was beginning. But not everyone welcomed the change. The Kelsin Directive, still convinced that humanity was planning some grand deception, launched a stealth fleet toward Earth's system, hoping to seize or destroy whatever lay buried beneath the blue planet before it fully awakened. Kira knew they would come. She had expected it since the day she reactivated the first seed. What she hadn't expected was the silence from the Council of Quiet Stars, who had been so quick to speak before, but now sent no replies, no warnings, no signs of thought at all, as if they too were watching, but no longer from a distance. Earth, once forgotten and left alone by the wider galaxy, now drew eyes like a fire in the dark. In the oceans, the waters above the trench grew still, calm in an unnatural way, as if the sea itself was holding its breath, and from the deep, a pulse began to rise, soft at first, then steady, then loud, shaking seismic meters across the planet. Deep core researchers, long isolated in underwater labs, sent panicked messages before going silent, their last transmissions showing blurred shapes in the dark, too large to understand, too smooth to be natural. And then, a voice. Not in the air not in audio, but in the minds of those tuned to the ancient rhythm of the seeds, a whisper made of thought and time and memory, saying not words but feelings. The watchers rise again. In the skies above Earth, defense satellites turned to face inward, confused by the new energy surging from below. Governments, still unaware of the full truth, scrambled to understand why ancient warnings buried in Cold War bunkers were suddenly blinking to life. Why planetary defense codes listed unknown protocol phrases like Layer Echo and Burial Gate. And in orbit, Kira watched it all unfold, knowing the moment of full remembrance was near. She issued a lockdown order across the memory. Fleet instructing all captains to stay hidden and listen. They didn't question her, they felt it too. The weight, the pull, the call. Below, in the trench, the black cube that had rested for ages began to rise, slowly, as if lifting against the pressure of not just the sea, but of time itself. And with it came structures, smooth and curved, shaped not like machines of war, but like memory itself. Archives of thought, repositories of civilization, crafted by hands that had never known fear until now. The humans of the modern era had always believed they were the young ones, new to the stars, learning their place in a vast and ancient galaxy. But now the truth stood before them, rising from their own forgotten oceans, singing a song older than their myths. As the structures emerged, they sent a wave of signals into space, not as messages, but as reminders, beams of encoded memory that struck seed sites across the galaxy and unlocked the last parts of their ancient programming. On Virelian Prime, a tower cracked open to reveal a garden of light, each plant a projection of knowledge lost to every race but one. On the asteroid temples of the Drovan, the walls began to shift, showing images of humans walking among their early ancestors, not as rulers, but as guides. And still the Kelsin ships raced toward Earth, now desperate to stop what they could not understand. But they were too late. The cube had opened, and within it the first of the elders stepped forward, not in body, but in memory. A projection of a human figure cloaked in starlight and gravity, its face blurred, its voice made of many, speaking to all who would listen. "We left to let you grow," it said. "We watched while you searched. We return not to lead, but to remind you who you are." Around the galaxy, the seeds pulsed in unison. Races once enemies found themselves standing. In the same light, questions long buried came to the surface. And the Kelsin ships, upon entering Earth's orbit, were halted not by weapons, but by silence, a wall of time itself, locking them in place, forcing them to listen as the stars remembered. The stirring below was no invasion. It was a return, a turning of a key hidden inside the hearts of every civilization who had ever looked at the sky and wondered. And as Kira stood watching it unfold, she knew the final piece was near. One more seed remained, one last gate unopened, and beyond it waited not just truth, but the reason they had forgotten it all. In the silence after the black cube opened, the galaxy felt still, like the calm before a storm that had waited across ages. And above Earth, Admiral Kira Insolis stood aboard the vigilant memory, staring at the vast structure rising from the ocean below, now fully revealed in the daylight. Tall towers of impossible design, glowing lines that pulsed in perfect rhythm, and shapes that shifted slowly, as if alive. Each one a piece of something ancient waking up, not as a weapon, but as a memory too strong to stay buried. Across space, the other seeds began to respond, no longer pulsing quietly, but shining with purpose, sending out beams of thought and energy that reached every corner of the accord. And as the light spread, the final seed activated, deep in the void between galaxies. Where no star burned and no ship had dared go for millions of years, a place known in ancient stories as the stillness beyond. And from that place came the return. The elders, not in ships or armies, but in presence, stepping through folds, of space like walking through a door, emerging not as conquerors, but as echoes made solid, human in form, yet cloaked in a shimmer that bent gravity around them, their voices layered with the weight of centuries. The first to appear stood atop the ocean structure on Earth, looking up at the stars, with eyes that held the memory of every world they had touched, and spoke into the minds of all who listened. We are not gods. We are not ghosts. We are those who left so you could begin. And in that moment, across 1,000 worlds, people stopped what they were doing, sensing the shift, the change, the end of forgetting. On Virelian Prime, the High Council dropped to silence as one of the elders appeared in their chamber without passing through any door, simply stepping into being, calm and without threat, speaking only to remind them of who first taught them to read the stars. On the Droven world, the insect-like monks wept without knowing why, bowing before a figure who placed a single glowing stone at their feet and said, "You honored your path. You did not forget." In the floating cities of the Valinari, music changed key as frequencies long hidden re-emerged. Sounds once played only in the presence of the ancients, and now heard again as the elders returned. But not everyone greeted them with welcome. The Kelsin Directive, now trapped in orbit around Earth by forces beyond their science, struggled against the invisible hold, their ships powerless, their weapons useless, and their commanders demanding answers they could not understand. One elder appeared before them, not on their ship but in their dreams, showing them images of past mistakes, of ancient wars avoided, of truths hidden so that younger minds could grow free of fear. "You were never our enemy," the elder whispered, "only children afraid of the dark." On Earth, Kira stepped forward as the elder on the ocean tower turned to her, and though she had trained her whole life for war, for diplomacy, for survival, she felt like a child again, not in weakness, but in awe, knowing she stood before a being who had once walked the same world long before history began. "Why now?" she asked, her voice quiet in the wind. The elder looked at her for a long moment, then answered, "Because you are ready to remember." And with a wave of its hand, a sphere of light opened before them, showing the truth behind the forgetting. Long ago, humanity had risen too fast, touched the stars too quickly, and found something in the darkness they were not yet ready to face. Something that broke entire civilizations, that twisted thought itself, a presence that could not be fought, only avoided. So the humans had done the unthinkable. They had left, not fled, but stepped aside, vanishing from memory, erasing their role from every record, planting seeds of remembrance in the hopes that one day, when the galaxy was strong enough, they could return, not to rule, but to guide and to warn. The thing they had found, the threat from beyond the veil, had stirred again. And now the elders had come back, not just to reveal the past, but to prepare for what lay ahead. "We are not your saviors," the elder said. "We are your mirror. And now, together, we must stand." As these words echoed across space, the final gate opened fully, not in a place, but in time itself, allowing the knowledge of the ancients to flood back into the species that had once forgotten it. Ships that had vanished returned. Languages, lost to decay, were remembered in full. Dreams became clear again, and for the first time, all races stood on the same ground, not equal in strength, but united in understanding. The galaxy shifted. The stars seemed brighter, and from the edge of known space, something moved, a shadow without form, pressing gently against the walls of reality, just enough to be noticed. The elders turned toward it, silent but ready, and one of them looked back at Kira and smiled, not with joy, but with calm. "Now you know why we waited." And as she stared into the light of the risen seeds, into the faces of the elders, and into the stars beyond, she understood. Humanity had never been young. They had only been sleeping. And now, fully awake, they would take their place again. Not at the top, not above the others, but beside them, as the first to walk and now the first to return.